you're looking to hire talent for your company, you need to hear today's podcast. And it's about AI tools in HR, specifically what's not working. And Daniel Friker will tell us exactly what isn't working and why. So Daniel, please tell us about your research of AI tools in HR and what's not working.
AI Superwoman podcast with Lily Patrascu shares the world's most innovative AI tools and processes to go from technophobe to AI pro, attract leads, close sales, automate your business, enhance productivity, and deploy AI agents to do your work.
Sure. Well, let me provide a little bit of my background first for the audience. So I have been in the staffing industry in some way, shape, or form for about 25 years. I had started with a little recruiting company, then went to a bigger recruiting company, and then ultimately went to Manpower Group, which is one of the larger staffing companies, and spent 20 years there. I got my graduate degree specifically in HR with a focus on data science. So that it was really kind of the precursor to what we're seeing today in AI around taking data and making better hiring decisions, right? And what started off as frankly a bar conversation, with some friends and colleagues around what are the best AI tools, turned into this really interesting problem, which is for all these new AI tools that are out there, and there's a lot of them, the data is suggesting that it's not working. And it has now become this 9 to 10 month journey in which having conversations with a lot of experts, it is really kind of a mismatch between the technology, the weapons, and the tactics to be able to find people. So I think this is a big discussion because AI's impact on jobs worldwide, according to McKinsey, is about 75% of positions are going to be impacted with AI. Companies are going to be looking for all sorts of new skills. So if you're an applicant, how do you get noticed? If you're a hiring manager, how do you find the best candidates? So that's going to be our conversation for today.
Thank you. So I find it quite strange that you're telling me that AI tools in HR are not working because there are so many tools. There should be
Correct.
Something that is working. So tell us what's the main problem that is leading to this conclusion that AI tools in HR are currently not really working, not really fit for purpose.
Sure. I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson because I'm old. And so I remember when in the early 2000s, you really had the emergence of essentially job boards, right? So the ability for individuals to basically take their resume, their skills, and actually disseminate that. I kind of caught the tail end of it when people would still fax their resumes or they would mail their resumes, in some cases physically show up. So these new cloud tools really created the precursor and really kind of the structured data set that a lot of these AI tools are foundationally built on, right? I'm going to be using LinkedIn's own data when we're talking here today. So according to LinkedIn, only about 4% of people that click easy apply will ever get noticed. So from an efficiency standpoint, if I'm an average person looking for a job, realistically, I can probably apply to 100? If I was really ambitious, maybe 200 jobs in a day. That would have been physically impossible 20 years ago. You couldn't do it, Now, on the other side, according to LinkedIn, the average number of candidates that are showing up in each recruiter's, inbox is roughly 1,000 per opening. So now you just have this massive, influx of positions. So what does this really mean? What this means is that recruiter now has to go into some type of tool. And so if you're looking at some of the biggest, what they call applicant tracking systems, ATS platforms. And so this is going to be things like your Workday, your Bullhorn, those are kind of market leaders, right? I'm very experienced with those particular tools. So you can set the settings as to how much if you're going to wake up in the morning and say, okay, I need to make some interviews today. I need to qualify the candidates that are in my inbox. Number one, if you're not making your resume in front of that recruiter within 48 hours, you're probably not even being seen. Number two, if your skill set match isn't within 95%, sometimes 97% or 100%, then they're not even looking at you. And so what these tools are doing is these AI tools, doesn't matter if you're talking about ChatGPT or Gronk or whatever, job descriptions have actually gotten a lot better because of AI. That is one case study that I guess we can check the box to say AI is doing a better job there, right? But now you have AI tools. So all these tools now, the big tools, now there's also specialty tools out there as well, are still taking those keyword searches and looking for individuals. Do they have those keywords in their resume? So now you have the ability to create an AI-driven job description, and now the individual person has the ability to make an AI-driven resume. But by the way, only 40% of people are actually using tools, AI tools, to configure their resume. So you could be the best skilled person and not even be seen because you're not even using, 60% of people aren't even using it, right? So that is the simplest process from start to finish, right? What we're now, the next question is, okay, how do we make it better, right? So where I have seen some best in class companies that utilize these tools, right? They're doing a couple of things right. They're changing the script, right? So traditionally, when you develop these AI tools, and by the way, please understand that I'm not trying to disparage all these great, software engineers, AI engineers that are out there cranking this. I'm not going to be. I don't want people to be, lighting up your your feedback loop. But at the end of the day, you're talking about really smart people that are basically looking to create good products, but they haven't necessarily understood what is the business due diligence, right? So we just talked about it's very efficient to be able to submit tools. And so if you're talking about it from a technical due diligence perspective, you can create these AI systems to kind of meet that desired performance, right? If you're an applicant, you can do the same thing. What the best organizations that I see are doing are actually getting smarter with even how they're implementing, or in some cases re-implementing these tools, right? But this time they're actually getting people from the business. So this could be IT, it could be accounting, it could be your production floor, whatever that is, to actually come in to say, okay, what are the success criteria? What are the real knowledge, skills, and abilities that we need? And then how do we actually do a better job interviewing? The average number of interviews right now, well, technically speaking, this data is from last month, but even for contract positions, the average number of interviews that are going on is about 3.4 for a contract position. Because right now, there is still hiring going on, regardless of what economic conditions and how they're changing almost on a daily basis. But even contract positions now, you're seeing a lot more interviews. Well, that's completely ridiculous in this day and age, when these tools can actually really do a better job quantifying your skills, my skills, or any applicant's skills, right? So create the business due diligence first, get people from the actual business. It'd be nice to have someone from HR, the talent acquisition team, because they're the ones that have to own it, right? And then the last piece is, it'd really be nice if you actually had some type of data science person or someone with a data science background to really look at your structured, unstructured data, right? Because this is where, especially if you're in the European Union, you now actually have to have some written processes around how you're utilizing AI in the selection process. As you can tell from my accent in the US, we don't really have that standardized yet. I know it's coming, but that's really kind of the critical thing. Then you have the technical due diligence piece. Because even in some of these existing tools, you take Bullhorn, you can take these things called tear sheets, which are basically the ability for the system to use some of its agentic AI capabilities to start essentially pipelining candidates that could be a great fit for you, letting the machine do its work once you actually set it up with the right parameters, once you have it set it up with the right data. And so when that recruiter is actually starting to get involved, they're really in that kind of they're providing that customer service and that last mile service. So I know I just said a lot.
Thank you. What I'm wondering, first of all, is isn't it detrimental when someone actually uses AI to submit their application? Because when you write your CV with AI and it is obvious that this was done, especially if you write a cover letter that hundreds of other people have written that looks very, very similar, doesn't that work in your, in detriment to your application versus you actually, getting favored for that position?
So again, let's maybe set some basic understanding, right? Even the best AI systems you have today, at best, are about 90 to 95% accurate, right? And we're talking about, it doesn't matter what version of ChatGPT and everything else. And by the way, you know this, because at least in the United States, the number of lawyers that have either been censured or disbarred because they're using AI, and essentially AI will sometimes make up, phantom court cases, which is fine if you and I are talking on a podcast. That's really bad in a U.S. court of law, where you have to attest to the fact that the information that you're providing is correct. Why am I bringing that example up? The reason why it's so important, if you're using any AI tool to custom config your resume CV, you still need to have yourself, your human being eyes to kind of look through, because it could be something as small as sometimes the editing gets screwed up, right? So you have to maybe re-edit your email, re-edit your CV. In other cases, it just will get it wrong, or it'll just kind of subtract information and whatever. So I think that is the most important thing with AI, is no matter what application you're utilizing and what type of format, you still have to have a quality assurance piece before you send that over to an employer. Otherwise, to your comment, like you can have some pretty egregious errors. Or, I mean, if you have your one shot to submit yourself to a company, submitting yourself at 90%, probably not the greatest thing. So yeah, you really do need to have eyes on target and make sure that whatever you're doing is correct before it goes to the customer.
Thank you. So that's what I'm leading up to, which is that if you're a hiring manager and let's say you receive 1,000 applications, out of which 900 have clearly been written with AI and some of them haven't been checked that well, then you're automatically not even going to consider or bother to answer to those people. And then you're really left just with the smaller number of people that are not yet using AI. So, I mean, the first thing is that to some extent, if someone is using AI, they are showing that, they are going with the times and they are, more developed maybe than others who are not taking the time to learn it. And on the other, you could actually dismiss someone who could be very good for your company because they are clearly using AI. You're dismissing them on the basis that they have written the same cover letter as 900 other applicants. So what's the solution there?
So I think maybe where your question is going is, we're talking about 2025 AI, right? I think we don't have to look very far to see what does 2030 AI look like, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that we're using today was started in 2016, 2017, and the major initiatives coming out of MIT, Stanford, with Google Brain and whatnot. In my humble opinion, I'm an optimist. There is going to be a day in which your skills will be more certified and quantifiable. Right. So, for example, my daughter plays a lot of video games, right? And so you can get these if you do Duolingo, you get these different trophies and celebrations for how many days in a row you get, right? We are slowly emerging to where people will have more quantifiable skills, both from a technical perspective, and this has been going on for years in the technical side. So if you're going for a networking position, or do you have your Cisco CCNA or CCDA, or, there's all sorts of kind of these, if someone sees that on your CV, That's a pretty good quantifiable skill to have if you're looking for those particular things. By 2030, in fact, I would say even by 2027, likely, individuals, when you are creating your CV, more and more of what you're doing will have more of a universal standard and certification to help quantify not just quantitative skills, but qualitative skills as well, right? So that is going to take more and more subjectivity out of the hiring process and actually provide more confidence to a hiring manager if they're looking at you, that you can do the necessary work that the company's looking for, if that makes sense.
Yes. Tell us, what's the ideal situation that you would like to see happen in terms of AI tools in HR, or the tools that you would like HR to use so that the hiring process is optimized?
Well, I think there's almost two questions that you asked there, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, which is, what do I think, kind of a desired future state looks like, and then kind of what can HR use today in terms of tools? All right. To answer the first question, and again, it's been a while since I've been to Europe. Thank you, COVID. But at least in the United States, I have a high degree of confidence that if I went to my Uber right now, in my office, that I can have someone show up at my house and then take me to the airport or wherever I want to go, right? I can see that individual. I can see how many people that they've done or hauled or whatever. I can see their rating, and I have a high degree of confidence that that person can take me from A to B, right? And conversely, by the way, most people don't know this, that person can see you too. So like, people don't realize as a passenger, you get a rating as well. But now you have a transaction where essentially AI assigned to this person, because no human being actually assigned a driver to, go to my house, but that's all automatic, right? That transaction happened, and now essentially I'm paying someone to take me to the airport, and it's in a very seamless way. There is a time, and we're already starting to see some examples of this in certain markets in Latin America and APAC, where people are going to certain power apps and people are accepting jobs on these apps and then being deployed through a combination of the skills that they've acquired, be it through university or technical school and everything else, but then also essentially their manager Glassdoor rating of how that person evolved. And again, you're getting to this kind of convergence where now you're creating some pretty efficiencies in the marketplace of finding talent, what you need, where you need it, and then also a component around upskilling. So if you have, gaps in your talent, that AI can help you essentially do the necessary training. There are examples of that today, right? And there are companies like Amazon that are really starting to fine tune this. And for now, that's a huge competitive advantage for them. By 2030, that is going to be standard operating procedure. And if you don't have that, you're probably being lapped. What I would say to people right now is, and when I talk to chief human resource officers, when I talk to, CIOs within major companies, one of the first questions that I ask is, have you even done a simple audit to see what kind of tools you're using, right? Have you even seen their effectiveness and what they're doing? When's the last time you've done a process audit with these new tools? And what I have found is, in a lot of cases, number one, they've never done a process audit. Number two, they might have acquired all these new tools, sometimes because of just someone buys them. Other times it's through mergers and acquisitions, that sort of thing. And then really kind of going, okay, if there's ever a time in this kind of post-COVID environment for an organization to kind of really think about what their hiring process looks like, this is the time. Because we're going to get through whatever economic conditions we're in right now. And it's going to, we're going to ramp up hiring again. So if you're not taking the time to kind of look in that process optimization in terms of kind of what I was talking about, that doing the business due diligence first versus the technical due diligence, that is going to provide that lower cost, increased revenue, improvements around efficiencies in terms of bringing in talent, right? I mean, we can get into more granularity in terms of how these tools are even set up, right? So in terms of how are you creating candidate pipelines? And I will tell you, the 80-20 rule is also within companies, right? what are those top 20% positions that you typically hire for, and it's, focus there because that's probably going to represent the bulk of your hiring. So if you're going to create efficiencies, go with the ones with the highest frequency count, right? And then kind of work your way down there. And that right there can really drive efficiency, not just in terms of how much you're spending on tools, how many recruiters you're using, how much you're spending on, search firms, that sort of thing. But now you're also able to, think about the time saved from a hiring manager perspective. So if I'm a VP of IT, if I'm a VP of manufacturing, and I have to do 3 interviews per available candidate, how much of that time is being wasted effectively versus actually doing the work you're hired to do, right? If you're an accountant, if you're an engineer, like company hired you, to not interview people all day. They hired you to do whatever kind of business function you're doing, right? And I know what I'm saying sounds so basic, but every day I'm talking to companies that are still like, we don't know what tools we're using. We don't know our processes. I'm disjointed from what the talent acquisition team is doing. I'm having to search on my own to find candidates, or I'm spending a lot of money with search firms. That screams inefficiency in a world where we have all these tools. So
tell us, what are the top 10 commandments for best practices of leveraging AI tools in HR?
We touched on a couple of them, right? Number one, doing a basic audit in terms of what tools do you have available today, right? And I think this is even more so right now, because as companies are looking for cost savings, because without naming names of major companies, a lot of companies have realized that they purchased a lot of things, during and even after COVID that aren't even being used. And so they're paying a lot of money there. So do your audit. Number two, right now, a lot of major CEOs are doing, right now, they're doing scenario planning based on kind of the changing economic events. What is coming after that is whomever's responsible for hiring. If there's ever a time to kind of do some kind of modicum of workforce planning, or at least scenario planning, now is the time to do it, right? Because if you understand what you're going to be hiring for, then you understand, okay, what's that end count that we need to have? Do you have a better process in place, right? Utilizing the better tools, and then getting the buy-in from the business to say, look, if we're doing all these things to help find you the best candidates, can you do it with 1 interview versus 3? That will not only improve the speed to hire for the candidate, make it a much better experience for them. It has the potential of lowering inefficient operational costs by 2/3 if you do it right. So I know it sounds a little bit like front-end work, but it has the ability to create some really significant hard dollar and soft dollar savings. And then I would say the last thing is, has anyone actually done any type of concerted training around, number one, what is AI good at doing, utilizing these new tools? So do they even understand the capabilities of these new tools? Oftentimes I find they have no idea. Or sometimes it's both good and bad. Sometimes they think that AI can just automatically select people. It can't. In some cases, it's illegal to do that. And then really kind of understanding, okay, so we understand what the AI capabilities are, and we understand where the humans need to be included. And then the last thing is it documented? Because especially in more US states, and I know this is true in Europe, making sure that you have proper documentation in the hiring process is now becoming essentially law and codified. So those are my commandments, if that makes sense.
Thank you. What else would you like people to know about AI tools in HR?
I think there has to be acknowledgement that there's a lot of things that have to change to get them to work better. You can buy anything off the shelf, but if you're not changing your process around it, you're wasting a lot of money. And again, I've seen too many examples of AI tools, and I've been talking to a lot of researchers on this, and they're still scratching their heads why we're not seeing these efficiencies. So that's my call to action to everyone that is so excited to adopt AI tools and technologies, but not even realize that the ones that they've already had. In fact, that's the kind of dirty little joke, is what management thinks their AI initiatives are, which is pretty meager, to the reality is with a lot of the time they don't even realize their own staff is using AI. They're just not telling their executives about it. So
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
you can find me on LinkedIn. So my name is Dan Friker. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure you'll share my profile. And yeah, I love connecting with people about this topic, both to, look and even demonstrate some of the latest, greatest AI tools. If from a researcher perspective, frankly, I want to be proven wrong. I want people to really kind of challenge some of the hypotheses that I put out there in terms of why it's not working. Because I think, again, right now we're in this gray period. We're in this period trying to figure out how to use these tools. Someone's going to figure it out. And they're going to be the next great Amazon, if you will, to be able to kind of dominate the market. But right now, we just have to kind of get through this difficult part where we're trying to make things work. So,
thank you. Are there any specific tools you want to name that HR is currently using?
I would say, though, the most specific tools that I have seen out there are really kind of the 800-pound gorillas in the industry. Right. And again, I'm talking about your Workdays. I mean, the Workdays has both an applicant tracking system and a vendor management system called Vinly. You also have Bullhorn, so these are all kind of, if you look at the top 5, applicant tracking systems that are out there today that have been adopted by Fortune 500, even 1,000 companies. I think most people acknowledge that they're there, but I'm shocked at how many people don't know how to use them and how to set them up properly, either as a simple user, a power user, or actually someone that is able to kind of go through some of the more advanced features in these tools to be able to kind of create these candidate pipelines that hiring managers can utilize to hire much more efficiently. So those are the tools that, again, I think really kind of dominate as of today, because literally every other week there is some type of new, oftentimes bespoke tool that's coming out there, because I think the next greatest thing is where everything is essentially on smart mobile devices, and that right there is probably its own undiscovered country in terms of what's going to dominate next. So it's still in flux, but there's some legacy systems out there.
Thank you.
Follow me for more AI productivity tools.